So for post-production on One Cool Morning, I want to touch on a couple different things. So for the editing process, I really wanted to hire an editor, but in the end, because the budget, because it would be coming out of my and my family's finances, I ended up editing it myself. I have edited a lot of short films. So first was putting all the footage into a timeline, putting all the audio in there, syncing all that up, deciding what shots you want, which angle was the best, which take was the best, and a lot of that you should do on set. And my first AD, Sam, had written down a lot of notes on which take said was the best. Once you get all that into your timeline, I ended up cutting a basic rough draft, threw in some temp music, threw in some sound effects, just all the stuff I could do. After that, I ended up hiring an editing supervisor, Hezekiah Condren. I do the time-consuming stuff, and he does the more artistic, creative stuff. So he would watch the first draft, write a ton of notes. I would take those notes and apply them. Send him a second draft. He would write some more notes and I would apply them. And so he would maybe take an hour to watch it and write down notes. And so I'm paying him for 1 hour rather than the 5 to 10 hours that would take to implement all the edits. And so that's kind of the route that I went for the editing process on One Cool Morning. Once I got to a pretty good solid draft, I thought, let's move forward on the sound design mixing, and I reached out to a friend of a friend's. He was totally down to do the project, and so I had to export a timeline in an AAF file for him, and he could upload it into his computer and start mixing all the audio and adding in sounds, adding in Foley. He would have to re-record feet stomping on the ground, that kind of stuff. And so that really took this film to another level. So for the music composing, I reached out to a buddy of mine a while back, even before a lot of this editing, and just saw if he was interested and available, and he was. And we moved forward on the music composing. I would write him notes for the feeling, the overall tone of the scene, and I would send it to him, and he came up with some amazing stuff. And then I would write some notes on that and send that back to him. When working with a music composer, I think is one of the most fun things I've done on all my films, actually, even my documentaries, because music that's made specifically for a film really brings it to life. So I would highly recommend working with a music composer. So for the VFX for this film, I had actually seen a project on YouTube called Pizza Time, and it was a short film that came out on Film Riot a little bit ago. And I looked on Facebook, and I just looked on different groups where it was like VFX artists and their name, and people would tag different people, and I reached out to one of them, and he was the guy who did the VFX on Pizza Time, and he was very interested in working on this film. And I asked him ahead of time, is there anything I need to know, because there's this last shot with multiple murders, and I need to know anything going into it when it comes to VFX. And he told me some different things, like leaving my shutter angle at 90 instead of 180, because he can add in the motion blur later, but it's gonna be much easier for After Effects to track that. So there was a lot of different things like that, but at the end of the day, what I had to do was just send him over the footage, and he worked on it. I find that post-production is one of the most fun times, actually, because you see your film come to life. Every time there's a new layer added to it, whether that was the coloring, the VFX, the music, the sound design, the mixing, everything heightens your film, and I really saw it come to life. So I hope that all this behind the scenes and the making of One Cold Morning video, you learned something and got something out of this. Thanks for watching.